Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate being here today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, in my first provocation, the idea of the past and how that might inform thinking about curriculum change. So we're in a time right now where we're seeing significant debates around curriculum reform, not just here in Alberta, but in a number of jurisdictions as well, including in Ontario, where there's been debates have raged around a proposed sexual health curriculum that would have included mandatory learning about sexual decision-making and LGBTQ identities. We've also seen significant debates within the US context, where a number of Republican governors in states such as South Dakota have attacked the teaching of critical race theory in schools and pledged to restore patriotic education, a move that was supported by the previous president. One of the things that's important to note, however, is these debates around what should be included in the curriculum are certainly not true. Here in Canada, for example, in 1953, a woman named Hilda Neatby wrote a very polemical and well-publicized book entitled So Little for the Mind. And she basically, it was a much publicized critique of progressive school reforms organized around John Dewey's philosophies. About 30 years later, a very influential report was published in the US called A Nation at Risk, that basically, it was supported by the Reagan administration. And the report outlined the dire state of education in America at that time that included declining educational standards and students being outperformed internationally. So in some ways, you can see the current educational debates in terms of the UCP's attempt as part of this genealogy of a call for the back to the basics and a sense using the language of crisis. So in this sense, you can see our current minister saying that we have declining test scores and we need to rectify that with including foundational knowledge in the curriculum. But one of the maybe perplexing things, if you're someone who studies education, around this narrative of the UCP that we're in the schools are failing or that there's declining test scores is, in fact, Alberta is one of the leading jurisdictions of education in the world. And so if we use these PISA rankings, international exams, if Alberta was a country, we'd be third in reading and in science, and we'd even be eighth in math, second only to Quebec within Canada, and we would be one of the most high-performing jurisdictions of education in Canada. So I think if we're looking for a real reason why there has been this curriculum, a desire by the current government to really reshape the curriculum, and we got to remember that they're simultaneously trying to rewrite curriculum in 8 subject areas, which is really without precedent, can be attributed to the rise of what Pippa Norris calls authoritarian populism and the accompanying culture wars. So I think the idea here is that we're seeing within Western societies a feeling that the society is gradually becoming more liberal, especially among the younger generation and perhaps more urban people, around a host of social issues, including egalitarian attitudes toward gender roles and identities and increasing acceptance of diversity. And there's a feeling that there's fears among those in society who have been historically advantaged and hold more traditional cultural values and beliefs that they're becoming marginalized and excluded within their own countries. And I think you can see this dynamic at play within the current debates and how we got to this time of curriculum reform, because the NDP, you can see here on the left, really embodied a certain set of values. So they're promoting key competencies like critical thinking. There was a focus on climate change, the histories of Indigenous people, and residential schools and gender identity. And leading up to the previous election, 2018, at a policy convention in Red Deer, Kenney declared to thunderous applause that if the government tries to smuggle more of their politics into the classroom through their curriculum, we will put that curriculum through the shredder. And then he went on to decry failed pedagogical fads and political agendas in the classroom. And he denounced the curriculum rewriting process as secretive and possessing a clear socialist agenda. So again, these fears that new values are coming and we need to use curriculum to recenter to the old values. So quickly to conclude, I think there's three key things that we can learn from this historically. The history of curriculum reform is not linear. It's not based on getting better and better in the linear story of progress. It's really about certain emphases, including the back to the basic movements that have appeared and reappeared about every 30 to 40 years since the advent of modern schooling. Curriculum reform is fundamentally about values. And I think that is why it becomes such an emotionally charged thing, because it's fundamentally about whose values society will be organized around. And finally, I think, though, what we've seen with the people that have been so engaged in these debates is it can be actually productive, because it provides important opportunities to reconsider foundational curriculum questions, including the purpose of schools, what knowledge is of most worth, and how we can best prepare the young to meet the challenges of the future. So thank you very much.